So, my name is Caitlin Galbraith, and this is a short lesson on the Battle of Antietam, which was the bloodiest single day battle in the bloodiest war in American history, which was the Civil War. About 23,000 casualties occurred on that day. That means people who were killed, people who were injured, and people who went missing. And that day was September 17th, 1862. The leader of the Union forces on the left was none other than General George McClellan, who was a little bit wishy-washy and was a little bit less than confident. And the commander of the Confederate forces on the right was more confident and pretty steady and very well respected. And that was Robert E. Lee. Bloody Lane, or Sunken Road, was a sort of a trench that was dug, and it was where the Confederate forces were on that day, and Union forces tried to break through these lines of Confederate troops. However, it took 2.5 hours for them to finally be able to break through. The Confederate forces really held their line for hours upon hours, but unfortunately, it was after 5,000 were killed or wounded, which is why it's called Bloody Lane. Burnside's Bridge, there's a typo, I'm sorry, 6,000 Confederates versus 12,000 Union soldiers. And it was where the Union soldiers tried to cross this bridge under the commander of Ambrose Burnsides. And he wanted the Union to cross this bridge. However, the Confederate forces were blocking it. The Confederate forces held them off for hours upon hours. However, the Union did eventually break through, as they did with Bloody Lane, but it was only after 2,000 were killed or wounded. As you may have seen with the last page and on this page, there's a little area where it says click here for more information. And on this box you can click and it's a link and it'll take you to a website where it tells you all about the Battle of Antietam, and it tells you about Burnside's Bridge. It tells you about Bloody Lane. It tells you about figures, facts, all of that stuff. Okay, so there's a short YouTube clip. It's like a documentary with information about why the Battle of Antietam was the bloodiest day in history. And we'll watch just a little bit of that clip. So as you see, some of the tactics that were used, some of the strategies were not very effective, especially on the Union side. While they had twice as many soldiers, General McClellan didn't send the best soldiers. He didn't send all of his soldiers. He was away, he wasn't there. Um, Things like that really affected the outcome of the battle. Um, and things like this really explain the huge loss of life, and things like the decisions that were made with Ambrose Burnside's really explain the huge loss of life. So the outcomes of the war, the Union claimed a victory. However, it was a small victory. It was not very decisive. Because of this victory, European countries decided to stay out of the war. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. They didn't want to side with anybody. They didn't want to declare the Confederate States of America an official nation. They didn't want to have a say. Abraham Lincoln had been looking for a Union victory in order to declare the Emancipation Proclamation. So after the victory at the Battle of Antietam, he declared it, and it gave freedom to slaves in the southern states, the states that were part of the Confederate States of America. So as many of us know, he didn't really have any jurisdiction, and it didn't really do very much. So here's just a short little quiz. I'll do a couple of them. Um, the winner of the battle, that would be the Union Army. The commander of the Union forces, George McClellan. Commander of the Confederate forces, that was Robert E. Lee, as you'll recall. So we'll just go ahead and check these. And as you see, they're wrong, so we'll go ahead and solve them and see the correct answers. And as you see, those are the correct answers there. So I hope you've learned a little bit about the Battle of Antietam. 23,000 people were lost, injured, or killed on that day. It was the bloodiest day, the bloodiest battle in the bloodiest war in American history. So just remember that, and I hope you learned something. Yeah, thanks for listening.